the seminar so that I can show it to the rest of the students, and then I'm going to share my screen. And so today we looked at some of the an orchid example, and I mentioned that it's going to be very big and very diverse. And that's something of that I want you to get an idea how diverse a plant group can be. And so for today, I'm just going to take this simple plant known as passion flower, and that's just an example. We'll see a lot of its intricacies. We'll see a lot of the relationship that it has with pollination and animals. And we get to see the different species that are out there, because I mentioned species and I mentioned hybrids, and we'll get to see that as well, so you can get an idea of what we're talking about. And so this is practically what I like to refer to as my story. This image that you see in front of you was the first passion flower that I happened to look at. Now, when I saw the flower, I could not keep my eyes off of it. It was weird. It was something that it's almost out of this world, unusual, unlike anything that I have ever seen. And to me, it kind of looked or resembled a spider. And so I kept looking at this flower for what it seemed to be several hours, until the owner of the house came out, and she told me, the plant came up by itself. If you want it, you can dig it up and take it home with you, which I did. And you want to know something? I was very happy with that plant. Then she pointed out to the top of the fence, and on top of the fence, there were some fruit. Orange colored fruit that when you open them, they have some seeds and some pulp. Then I was told that I could take as many seeds as I wanted to, plant them, and let's see what happens, which I did. And before I realized, I had over 200 passion flowers growing everywhere. But you want to know something? I was really, really happy. It was at that point in time when I should have said, no more. But the fact of the matter is that people fail to do that. And so what I want to share with you is what I like to refer to as my addiction to passion flowers. Not so much my passion for passion flowers as many people may claim that I have. So these are the topics that we are going to cover today. We have general introduction. We're going to have the anatomy, so covering vocabulary so that you can kind of get a feeling for it. The legend of the passion flower, why some of these plants become really, really important or popular. Pollination, because that explains why certain flowers have certain specific color, fragrance or not. Then hybridizing, because that's going to happen with passion flower. We get to talk about the fruit, which is edible and something that people like, as well as the association with the butterfly. That is going to be another reason why people may grow this specific plant. So if we look at where passion flowers come from, the vast majority is going to be from Central and South America. Looking at a map, there is a couple of disjuncts, about 10 species that are native to China and Southeast Asia, about 3 species that is native to Australia. We'll get to see those later on. And then 1 species native to New Zealand that we'll get to see later on. So apart from those, everything else is from Central and South America or the Americas. That's where we're going to find the majority of them. And they are going to be growing in the understory. They are going to be vines for the most part. They're going to be opportunistic. They're going to wait for trees to fall down. When they fall down, they're going to open a gap in the forest. And it is a very short window before the forest recovers that gap. And so the passion flowers has a very short time to grow as quickly as possible to reach the light on top of the canopy and be able to survive. So when we're looking for them, we're gonna concentrate on roadsides or areas that have been disturbed by humans because that's gonna be the equivalent to a tree falling down. So next to the road, we may see a vine and then explore and see if it's a passion flower. And so when we're looking for passion flowers, there's no stopping us. We are gonna get them no matter what. Allow me to introduce John Vanderplank. John Vanderplank wrote one of the earliest book on passion flowers. And it is this book that kind of showed me what was to become the rest of my life. So paging through the book, it went something like this. I want that one, and I want this one, and I want this one, and I want that one, and that one, and that one, and that one, and that one. And by the end of the book, I wanted them all. Since then, I have dedicated my life to finding, photographing, recording, and cultivating the passion flowers of the world. And so at some point, I wonder if I would ever meet John Vanderplank. And for a while, it was a far-fetched dream because he was an author out of England and I'm in Southern California. But in 2001, I had the opportunity to meet John Vanderplank. So it was a great experience. We went to Costa Rica and that's where I met him. And little by little, through finding seeds, finding plants wherever I could, my collection started to grow and I started getting more plants. And so at some point in time, I also asked myself a question. Wouldn't it be nice if one day I could go into the jungles with John Vanderplank to look for passion flowers? Which I have done many, many times. This is French Guiana. We go there, try to go there every single year looking for plants wherever they are in the wild. So I got a chance to work with John Vanderplank, see how he does some of his drawings that are part of the book. I became a big fan of him, became his #1 fan, came to admire all of his work that he was drawing, so much so that I even married his only daughter. And so it is collectors, people that like plants that are gonna go out there and they're gonna find them. So for now, the sunset comes, the passion flowers go to sleep. In the morning, they're gonna find themselves in front of Trader Joe's as an impulse purchase. People are gonna buy them, they're gonna like the flowers, they are gonna take them home and they're gonna plant them. Then passion flowers are gonna do what they know. They have not realized that they're out of the jungle. It's a lot of light. They are gonna grow as quickly as possible and they're gonna get big. It is unfortunate that people will then consider them as weeds when the plants are just doing their biological function of growing fast and covering a large area because that's how they're going to survive. So it is very important that you know that they can get big, but there's also cultural practices like pruning that you can carry on the plant so that you don't allow them to get as big as or I can, or you can restrict its growth to a specific structure or specific area. Structures like archways, this is a photograph from the garden a couple of years ago. And as I've gone throughout the city, I have photographed how several people are growing passion flowers. So entryways, here's a garage that has passion flowers, and even just kind of draping over a fence, they're gonna do quite well. And growing on some kind of structure, they're gonna do quite well. Another archway here, and even in containers or pots. They can grow well and they will flower and fruit if that is what you're looking for. Or just a house with nothing but passion flowers in the landscape. As long as you give it the support, the structure to climb on, they will take over an area. And so from the general introduction, let's look at the anatomy. So when we look at passion flowers, we're gonna assume they're gonna be a vine. So we're gonna have the stem. The stem is going to be a climbing, so it's gonna stretch, allowing the plants to reach high. We're gonna have the flower. We'll get to dissect that later. But the flower that's going to allow for the plant to carry its sexual reproduction. We're going to have the leaf. The leaves on passion flowers are going to be extremely variable, and we'll get to learn that later on. We're going to have leaf glands or nectar glands. The plants can secrete nectar or sugar water, and we'll find out the role later on. Then we're going to have the tendril. The tendril is a modified stem, and it's what the plant is going to use for grasping a structure or grasping onto a stem, or it's going to use it for climbing. So that's how the plants are going to be able to sustain and support themselves with a tendril. If we look at the flower and we cut it in half, this is what we're going to find. We're going to find that there's going to be petals and sepals that are going to be different from each other. So there's going to be a total of 10 altogether. We're going to find unique structures in passion flowers, as you're going to find with other plants. With passion flower, there is a structure known as a corona. Unfortunately, it shares its name with a virus, but that's okay. The corona that is going to be made up of filaments. The filaments that are going to be the fringy or the frilly part of these flowers. So the corona made up of corona filaments. Then the reproductive structure in the center will have what is known as a column or a structure that is going to have on top the anthers, which will produce the pollen, and the ovary, which will become the fruit later on, and the stigma that will be the area where the pollen will be placed by the pollinator. So this will be the structure of the flower for passion flowers. Now, when we look at passion flowers, there's going to be two forms on the flowers. The flowers are faced towards the sky, that we're going to call them dish shape or dish-like, or the flowers are faced towards the ground, which we're going to call them bell shape. So either bell shape or this dish shape will be the two forms. So from the anatomy, we can look at the legend of the passion flower, keeping in mind that in the 1400, 1500, 1600s, the doctrine of signatures was prevailing over the belief of people. If you don't know what the doctrine of signature is, it was the belief that plants can be used to cure certain ailments if they had the same shape as the body part. So a leaf, heart-shaped leaf could be used to treat problems with the heart. So it was an association that people kind of made to the forms of the plant. And so in the same manner, when the Spanish missionaries were going through Central and South America, they saw the flower and they associated with the crucifixion of Christ. And so the different parts become symbolic. So if we take this flower, for example, they saw that the three stigmas that are on top would represent the three nails that were used during the crucifixion. They saw the 5 stamens and they correlated them to the 5 wounds. Then they saw the ovary on top of the lance, on top of the column, and they associated that with the sponge on top of the lance where they gave Christ vinegar. Then they looked at the petals and the sepals. There's 5 of each, a total of 10. So they excluded Judas because he betrayed him and Peter because he denied him. Then the corona filaments represents the crown of thorns, and that is why the name for that structure is known as corona, because of the crown of thorn. If we look at a few other characteristics, the tendrils, the structure for climbing, represents the whips that they use for the Romans use for lashing Christ. The leaves, if they have 5 fingers, so they look like hands, resembles the hands of the Romans who crucified him. The color purple on passion flowers represents Christ's passion, and that is why the plant is known as passion flower, because it has the passion of Christ. If the flower happens to be white, then it represents Christ's purity. If the flower happens to be red, then it represents Christ's blood. On many passion flowers, we are going to find nectary glands that are going to be round and gold in color. Those represent the silver coins that were paid to Judas for betraying Christ. And on the back of the flowers, we have another structure known as bracts. Those are modified leaves. Those will represent the Holy Trinity, the Father, the Son, and the Holy Spirit for the crucifixion. And the legend made the passion flowers extremely popular. And so when the Europeans started to colonize Americas, the passion flower, because of this belief, was one of the first plants that was introduced into the European garden. And it is no surprise that the national collection of Passiflora is in Europe, mainly in England. And that is where they have a lot of things that are passion flower related, from products to pictures and paintings, and even bone china. And it is maintained by John van der Planck that I introduced a little bit before. So from the legend of the passion flower, let's look at the passion flower group. So when we have big groups of plants, we need to make them into smaller segments so that we can understand them. It is estimated that there are over 700 species of passion flowers. I mean, species, as I mentioned before, are nature made. So many of them are still awaiting publications, but about 700 species would be a good number. So we're gonna take those 700 species and then we're gonna put them into small group. The first group I like to refer to as the rare passion flowers. So there is a group of about 60 species that are gonna be tree or shrub or woody lianas that will not have tendrils. So these are passion flowers that have abandoned the climbing habit, and now they rely on a very robust and strong stem to support themselves. So on the photograph, I am in front of Passiflora spherocarpa, growing in Butterfly World in Florida. And that is the stem that I'm holding for scale. In French Guiana, we happen to find what they refer to as the crown jewel of this group, the passion flower that likes to flower at the base of the plant. So the leaves, I'm holding the vine, is probably somewhere on top of the canopy. I never saw them, but the flowers are on the ground. And here's the close-up of that specific species. And then the passion flower that has the biggest leaves is macrophylla, which macrophylla means large leaves. Here it is when I saw it for the first time. And then here it is when I happened to grow the plant and got it to flower here in our greenhouse. And here's the close-up of that flower. And then here's Pietieri that I also, the first time I came across it in Florida. And here's Pietieri in our greenhouse when I got it to flower as well. And here is the flower for an individual, and even a close-up right there. In my travels, I've gone to Brazil. So this photograph is from Brazil, where we found hematostigma. And here is the close-up of that flower and that one. And then in French Guiana, Passiflora candida gives you an idea of the forest and gives you an idea where the flower is right here. And you have to be able to see that driving at 60 miles an hour, which I did. And then we stopped and we photographed and see if we can find seeds and anything else. And a few other things that you might see across, Uisit, that is also part of this group. And Tina, right here, that I grew for a couple of years and I longer have. So that's the first category. They're rare, the trees, lianas. The second category is going to be the weird passion flowers. They're weird because they like to flower on the tendril, keeping in mind that the tendril is a modified stem. About 6 species produce the flower buds out of the tendrils, and that's where they like. So when we see this plant, we have the branching tendril, and we see the end of the tendril for climbing, and then we have branching of 2 very large buds right here. So this is the crown jewel of this group. There I am when I saw it for the first time in the wild in Surin, French Guiana, Passiflora, and there's a close-up. And there's from the wild when I took a photograph. But prior to this photograph, I flowered here in the permaculture greenhouse many years before. So very difficult to cultivate. Only a very few number of people have managed to get it to flower. I was number 3 in the world to get it to flower in cultivation. And then we have Arborlisi. There's the tendrils with the buds, which will open into this smaller flowers. So, and then those are all that I have from the weird. Now let's talk about the cutesy passion flower. These are going to be very small flowers. Yeah. So the cutesy passion flowers are going to...
Yeah, let's go. Next time. All right. Are you listening to Jorge?
No. So the cutesy passion flowers are going to be very small. And here I have 3 of them together, just kind of for scale. And here's 5 of them for scale with a dime. And here are 5 of them on top of the common blue that most of you may have seen, or if not, just walk around our garden. They're growing everywhere. So we have 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here, 1 here. So 5 on top for scale. So when we look at the small passion flower, this is the smallest one in the world. It is native to the Florida Keys, and it extends into Cuba and a couple of other small islands in the Caribbean, and that is it. In its natural habitat in southern Florida, it is endangered like many other plants. And here's where I had a chance to grow it before and get it to flower. And there's the close-up of the flower, and there it is on top of the common blue passion flower that you might see. And there it is in front of the common blue that you may see. The second smallest is Alanthophila from Costa Rica. Here it is holding it my fingertips. Here it is on top of a penny. And here it is on top of its big sister passion flower. And then we have an assortment of other, the cork stem passion vine. There it is on top of its sister. Obtusifolia, here it is. It's starting to get a little bit larger. And so here is, just for scale and measurement, from left to right, the smallest passion flower in the world, and the second, and probably the third. There might be a few more here in between, but it gives you an idea. Bundari from Costa Rica, known for the golden nectar glands that you see there. And here's the close-up of the flower, and there's a close-up of that, and an even close-up of the corona. And on top of its sister, Pusilla from Costa Rica as well. Here's the close-up of the flower, and there it is in front of the bigger flower. And Tentandra is the only native species to New Zealand. It is known as New Zealand passion fruit. Here it is when I've grown it, and I was able to take a photograph for scale. Ornithura, now we can see the leaves that are very slender and almost look like boomerang with beautiful yellow variegation in the middle. We kind of heard that word today. Here's the close-up of the flower and face view, and there it is next to the bigger flower there. And that would be right here on the far left for this photograph. We have a petala, meaning no petals. So what we see in here are the sepals. The petals would be there, kind of almost gone. And there's for scale with a dime, and that would be right here in the center. Philippines from Eastern United States, that would be right here, believed to be one of the most cold hardy passion flowers that there is. As well as Sexocelata, which is the bat wing passion vine. So here is the leaf, looks like the wings of a bat. Here's the flower. There's the close up to it, and there it is. Now they're the size of a quarter or getting bigger. Porphyrietica, we found in Mexico, Michoacan, Mexico. We were able to bring it into cultivation, and there it is. Now they're getting much bigger. And then Juliana, green passion vines, also from Mexico. Here's the flower, and there it is for comparison. And then Amalocarpa with white corona filaments. There it is for scale. And trifasciata means 3 stripes. So the 3 stripes made by the leaves. There's the close-up, and there's the flower for scale. Mexicana, I have here from obviously Mexico. Here's the close-up of it, and there it is next to the other flower. And Eurolensis right there, and here it is for scale. So now they're getting way bigger. Lacitelensis could almost be half the size, and Roberaceae is also quite large right there. And so we have organensis, beautiful variegation. Again, the coloring on the leaves and the flowers right there. Punctata, very fragrant flowers. And Altebailobata, this is the only Southeast Asia species that I've been able to get and grow. And there it is on top of my fingers. And in my travels, I came across pyramids and a couple of other things. That's not important and exciting to me. What's exciting is right here, because that's where we found Guatemalensis. That was in Chiapas, Mexico. And auriculata right here, and Stanleyi, lutea, and Yucatanensis from Yucatan, just to show you a few more photographs. I had several opportunities to grow what we refer to as new species. So when you see SP novo, meaning species new, so we think it's a new species, and we're doing some work into figuring out and determining if it's a new species or not. So we're calling that a new species Subelito. New species Accidentales from Colombia, very fragrant. And then a new species, and I'm not sure where this one is from, that I was able to grow. A species that was discovered in 2001, Tacanensis from southern Mexico. It was recorded and described, but the flowers were never seen. And so it was after we did a trip to Chiapas, Mexico, that I was the first person in the professional community network that saw and photographed the flower for this species. So there's the side view of that. And that added to the full description of the plant. So later on, we publish the missing information, which is a flower. And then one of my earliest passion flowers, Complanata, that I grew for a while, took the photograph, and later on when it was published as a new species, my photographs were used in the publication. And Intricata, that came to me as a possible new species, I was able to get it to flower in the horticulture unit. And these are my photographs and some of the first photographs in cultivation. And in fact, it was published. And if you see here, it says John McDougall and Jorge Ochoa and Sean Krosnick. So this is my first publication of a new species of passion flowers. And there it is, my photographs and my recording. So that was published in 2018. And then in the trip to Chiapas, we just came across a passion flower leaves, and we can tell that they're passion flowers. We have no idea what it looks like. So often we collect the sterile material, meaning no flowers, and we have to wait, flower it, cultivate it, flower it. We happened to find the fruit for this individual, but it was after we found the flower that we can definitely, without any doubt, we can say, yep, that is a brand new species. And sure enough, this is a brand new species that we also described, and this was described and published in May of this year. So Isoletis. So this is my second species that we publish of new species of passion flowers. And so if we just look at the cutie category, here they are kind of in ascending size from left to right, the smallest to some of the bigger ones that I've shown you. And here it is for scale with the common blue passion flower. And here they are just different angle. So you can see the difference in the size. So from the cutesy, now we can look at the drop dead gorgeous passion flowers. These are gonna be the big ones. These are gonna be the ones that have a very, very elaborate corona filament, the fringy part. That's gonna make the plant look really, really attractive. This is what people like to grow. So here's the corona filaments for that individual. So we have drop dead gorgeous passion flowers that are gonna be bell-shaped first. So trilova, very large flowers. Here's a photograph of the inside. So we have the reproductive components and the corona filaments facing down. We have actinia right here with blue and white. And here is the face view of the flower. We have alata right there with close-up of the interior. Nidida right there and the close-up of the interior. Venusta, missed it by a couple of months. I grew it, I flowered it. I knew it was different. And then like 2 months later, somebody published it as a new species. This one is native to Ecuador. And there's a close-up of the flower. Gabrieliana from French Guiana, also not published not too many years ago. Nigradina, I got the seeds, I got to flower, and any of the plants that are in cultivation in the US came from me because I was the only one that was able to grade it to flower and fruit, and then we propagate it and distribute it. So that's beautiful flowers. Palenquensis from Ecuador, and there's the close-up of that. Macrocarpa, meaning big fruit with blue flowers. And there's the close-up of the flower. Platyloba, now we can see the bracts. So this big leaf-like structure, those are the bracts. So the bract is the showy portion of the flower. The petals and sepals are right here, not as showy. And there's the close-up of the flowers and the close-up of the reproductive structures. There's Phoenicia or ruby glow, as you might find it in the nurseries with this close-up. Larifolia that we have in the garden growing right now, maybe even flowering. There's the close-up of that. And then a new species, Matea, which is from Colombia. And new species because when we found it, it was just a few months after it was published. And there it is. And here's the face of it. And there I am holding it when we found it in Colombia. And then this shape passion flower, sometimes you might have the petals that are going to reflex completely, giving it the appearance of a shooting star, for a lack of better description. There's Munsi from Venezuela. Here's Lovgreni from Brazil. There's in a while, and there's in cultivation. Gritensis, also from Brazil, and there's the corona filaments. Sprucey with a close-up. Subrotunda with the close-up, and cyanea, which means blue, because kind of the bluish color on the corona filaments. And there's an even close-up of that. And then incarnata right there, native to eastern United States, crassifolia, right there. And then this par uh, vase, and then racemosa, so the passion flower that has a grouping or a cluster of flowers. Most often you see passion flowers with one flower. This one chose to give them in what is known as a raceme or a cluster, and that's how they're gonna look. And there's the flowers. Garki collected from Suriname, big flower. We collected the seeds and they went to Europe, and that's they came back to America later. And then Posley from Costa Rica, I helped with the publication for the fruit. So they needed to have records of the fruit, so I was able to get the fruit. And here's my photograph that I sent, which was used for drawing the fruit for the publication. There is a different group that is known as the Love in the Mist Passion Flower, and that is because the bracts are going to be ferny or feathery like. So we have Urbaniana because it was first discovered in some urban area. Arida, that is native to southern United States, in the desert. Velosa means hares. Flora, like Nigeria. Arizonica, native to Arizona, the deserts area of Arizona. And then there's another group that is known as taxonia. These are going to be passion flowers that may not have the fringy corona filaments, and they may also have a very long tube. This will be a group that originates in high altitude. So the top of the Andes Mountain is the area of highest diversity for this group. So they like to be cold. So here's a different view. So notice the corona filaments are reduced to simple knobs, and that's about it. Here's Pinatistipula, picture from Peru, but this is the missing link. So when we look at a close-up of the flower, it has the tube and everything else, but it still kept some of the corona filaments. And here's a different view. So it's a taxonia, but does have a corona filament, so the missing link. Otherwise, they don't really have one. And there's an even closer view of those. I've grown mixta, so this is here in the horticulture gardens in the front area. And you can see the number of flowers that it gave, and you can see the flowers right there. And close up right here. So this is in cultivation. This is where I found it in Ecuador. So once again, high altitude, you can see the mist in the background coming in every day. It was cold, but that's the temperature that it likes. So here's from the wild, mixed in Ecuador. And there's a couple of more flowers in the face of that. And then Tarminiana, this photographs from climbing the second highest mountain in Central America. So this is Guatemala. And there's the flowers that are facing down. And there's the close-up of that. These are in cultivation, so you can find it growing around here. And there's also white forms. So they lost the pink, so that there's a selection for white colored flowers. And there's a different view of that. Matthewsi, here's a smaller one, and there's the close-up of the flowers right there. And there's also a white variety or form out of this individual that I have grown as well. And there's a close-up of that. Luz Marina from Colombia. So here it is when I happen to photograph it in cultivation. And there's an even closer view. Mollissima, known as banana passion fruit. These photographs are in cultivation, but I have also seen it in many of my travels to Colombia and Ecuador and Peru. It's all over the place. And then Antioquiensis from Antioquia, Colombia. There's when I've grown it and I've gotten it to flower. And there's these photographs are now from the Botanic Garden in Bogota. And also Cumbalensis from Ecuador. Here's in the wild. And there's my flower here in cultivation. And there it is when I was in Colombia for scale with that. And then the Turina from the wild. Unfortunately, I have not had the opportunity to grow this one. So these are photographs from Colombia that we found. Uh, and there I am for scale. And then my second trip to Colombia, we really went up the mountains into faraway areas, and we were able to find a few more interesting ones that most people don't see. La Nata, there I am holding it for scale. And there's a side view of the flowers and the face view right there, and the close-up of that. And there I am holding it for scale. Cumbalensis, this other form that has more pinkish flowers. And there's a close-up of the flowers that I am holding it for scale. And then Kutrakasi right there, and there is the face, and there's when we found it and grabbed it, and there's the close-up of that flower. There I am holding it for scale. And then what was considered the rarest passion flower from Colombia. Colombia has about 10%, if not less, of the wild forest. Everything else has been destroyed. So at some point, they found this plant. They took some seeds and sent them to areas where they grow well. This one happened to be one of the few that survive. Is in San Francisco, Striving Arboretum. That's where the photographs were taken from. And so when I was there a couple of years ago, there was a few flowers still. So I was able to photograph it. And there's the flower in my hand, and there's where I open it for taking the photograph. Now they found a few more, but luckily it's still alive, but it's still in a lot of danger. And in my trip to Colombia, here is just a sample of the different individuals that we encountered and I photographed. And in my recent trip, I was able to take a trip to Peru in January, pre-pandemic. And then we found Gracilis. So this is the road that leads to Machu Picchu. So if you ever go to Peru and you want to walk to Machu Picchu, this is where they'll take you. And right by the road, there I am holding Gracilis. There it is looking down. And here it is when I'm holding it. Gracilis means kind of gentle and small. And so from the different groups, let's talk about pollination. And pollination is very important because that's going to determine why flowers have certain characteristics. And the term pollination syndrome is going to be very important for you to know. So when we look at the first pollinator, these are going to be flowers that are pollinated by hummingbirds. So hummingbirds are great. They can hover, which means that they do not need to land. So plants may not need a landing platform. Hummingbirds do not smell. They get to find the flowers by using their eyes. So you're gonna find bright red colors, usually in the realm of scarlet red, orange, scarlet red, and a couple of blues, and maybe some yellows, but definitely the reds and the orange will be the preferred colors for hummingbirds. Since hummingbirds do not really smell, the flowers that are pollinated by hummingbirds do not have any fragrance. Hummingbirds can fly, can hover, can fly upside down and even backwards. The flowers that are pollinated by hummingbirds will also have a large amount of nectar because they are birds that will require lots of calories. So they need to be fed. If we look at the syndrome for passion flowers that are pollinated by hummingbirds, they're going to be in the red category or some kind of red pigment somewhere else. You can see with this one that the corona filament are going to protect the pollen, the nectar. So they're going to kind of be stuck next to the column. You're also going to see that the column, the structure in the middle is going to be high because there has to be enough space for the hummingbird to put the beak, take the nectar, and the pollen needs to be deposited on the back of the bird. So the length of the column is going to be much, much longer than with other pollination syndromes. You can see the reflexing of the petals, so they go straight down. So this hummingbird is not landing anywhere. Here we see the extreme, not my photograph, I wish, but this is the sword-bill hummingbird, and Cifra. And you can see the length of the beak when it's exactly the same as the length of the floral tube. So this is the specific pollinator for some of this grouping that have the long tube. The hummingbirds are going to use their tongue to lick the pollen from the flowers. So it's going to go in there and take the pollen. Here's a few other species that are pollinated by hummingbird, Virifolia. Here's Cupra from the Caribbean island. Notice the cornafilament very rigid because it doesn't want to release the nectar to anybody, just the hummingbirds. And there's the cornafilaments. Here's Perfoliata, also from the Caribbean islands. And then Murucuya, now we have a very different adaptation. The corona filaments have fused, creating the tube to exclude pollinators. So now it is only for the hummingbirds. So now it's the corona filament that is creating a tube. So this is Murucuya. So there's the corona filaments. And its close sister, Tulea, again, the tube is made up of the corona filaments. From Australia, we have Ariantia. Now, nobody has ever seen a bird feeding on these plants. We have the syndrome, we have all the characteristics, so we assume that it's pollinated by some kind of Australian bird, but nobody has actually recorded that. So my trip to Australia is going to be to scout some pollinators for this specific plant. So this is the number one, or the first one, native to Australia. The second one, native to Australia, would be Herbertiana, also bird pollinated. And the third one would be Cinnabarina, also bird pollinated. And then we have Membranaceae from South America. Now the bracts is what the hummingbirds are going to use to locate the flowers. The petals themselves are going to create a somewhat of a tube, and it's facing down. And then we have Glandulosa from Suriname, French Guiana. So here's where the hummingbird will feed on. And then Mendoki from Brazil, that is also hummingbird. And then Mundi, Quadrangulosa, and Sanguinolenta, that will have a nice slender tube, as well as its close sister, Citrina from Mexico, which is in the yellow category. And in the Love in the Mist, Sablanceolata, or Reflexiflora, again, reflexing petals. And then in my trip in January to Peru, we found Trifoliata early in the morning, and there's the flower for this individual endemic to Peru or the Peruvian Andes area, Trifoliata. And so from the hummingbirds, now we move into insect pollination, and insects play another major role. So now we are going to change the color to either purple, blue, or some kind of yellowish and even white. We're now going to add the fragrance either of honey or some kind of perfume for the flowers. And so here we have, well, not really pollinating it, but here we have a native pollinator, native bee to southern Mexico, pollinating or walking around a passion flower. But here we have a bumblebee. And if you look at the height of the column, now it's going to be much, much shorter because the pollen needs to be deposited on the back of that bee. So as the bee is walking around, it will then also deposit the pollen on the stigma. So that's very important. Here is the blue, and we have the native bumblebee that is going to be the large black bee that you might see out there. And it is the perfect size. So you can see here exactly what the plant wants to have the pollen deposit and pollen taken. And so that's going to be for larger bees. And even honeybees may play a role with some of the cutesy or the small flowers. They would become the pollinators. And even smaller sweat bee. So here it is from the wild in Suriname. It will collect the pollen and it will carry the pollen, and perhaps as it's moving around, here's that same or a different bee, but very small, that is walking on the stigma of the plant, and it will bring about pollination. So even those may play a role, not as big as the other, maybe not the main pollinator, but they will carry pollination as well. And even hoverflies or flower flies, in the process of walking around the pollen, feeding on the pollen, they could also land and walk on the stigma, delivering the pollen. And there it is as it's feeding on the pollen. And then the beetle, we seen this green fig beetle. I was able to record it feeding on the pollen, and it was loaded with pollen and walking around. They're kind of clumsy, maybe not the best, but if it's able to deliver the pollen to the rightful area, then the plant will be pollinated and it'll be happy. And here it is feeding with its face on the stamens. And so we have a few other examples of passion flowers that are insect pollination. Notice we now have the landing platform. So the corona filaments will be the place for the insect to land, or the corona filaments here, or if there's one. And so the last group is going to be bats. So bats are also, there's a group of bats that are going to be very, very good for pollination. Bats are going to be nocturnal, so they're going to come up at night. But notice the mouth of the bat is going to be elongated. That is because it needs to reach deep into the flowers to take the nectar. Now, the bats are going to eat primarily the nectar from the flowers. But in the process, they're going to get themselves covered with pollen. Now, pollen is a structure that is not very easy to digest. Most humans cannot digest bee pollen. We don't have the enzymes to digest bee pollen. So to achieve digestion, the bats have to lower the pH of their stomach. They have to make it more acid, and they'll do that by drinking their own urine. So that way, the bat, as when they go back to the roost, they will clean themselves with their tongue. They will eat the pollen. They will then be able to extract the valuable vitamins, minerals, and amino acids from the plant, from themselves. So the passion flowers that have originated or have a pollination syndrome for bat pollination are going to have primarily white color. White because they have to be able to be seen by the bats, and the bats are going to be nocturnal. They're also going to open the flowers at night because that's when the bats are going to be active. So main color is going to be white, followed by dark purple brown, and also greenish or green-like in color. If you notice the image, the flowers are going to be produced towards the outside of the plant. So they're going to be pushed away. And if you look at the reproductive structures, everything is kind of put towards one side, the side that the bat is going to come from, to ensure that there's going to be good contact of between the bat and the reproductive structures of the plant. So here's some photographs. So notice all the structure is on this side where the bat is going to be coming from. Here's some photographs of bats pollinating those passion flowers. So you can see a very deep nectar reservoir, and you can see the snout of the bat fully inside and making great contact. And I've grown ovalis. That's the flower that is being shown here. So ovalis, once again, structures towards one side, right there. And this one, there's a close-up of them. There's the bat in the wild pollinating this ovalis. Again, not my photograph because I don't really do bat research. But once again, very nice contact of the reproductive structure to the animal. Penduliflora is the greenish color passion flower, and this one is from the Caribbean islands. So it's found throughout Cuba and a few other islands in the Caribbean. And there's a close-up of it, and there's the close-up of the flower. And in this case, the corona filament keep the pollen, the nectar from draining away from the flower. And then Trisecta, very large white flower. This is one that I grew here. But in January, I was able to see it in the wild, gigantic plant, side of the road in Peru. And I was able to take some photograph of some of these plants in the wild. So from pollination, then we can go into hybridizing. So regardless of how the pollen gets transferred, you may have what is known as a hybrid. So hybridizing with passion flowers is very simple. So you find two different species, and then you take the pollen from one plant and you deliver it to the stigma component of the flower on the other. And if you do the opposite, if they're compatible, then they'll produce a fruit and some seeds. You grow those seeds, and they'll have the characteristics of both of those individuals. So collectors of passion flowers are constantly doing hybridize. My only hybrid is been from these two individuals. So I took the pollen from this individual and I deposited right there. I grew the plant, and this is the offspring. This is the only hybrid that I have recorded. This is Zulita, that I named after my wife when she completed her master's degree. That's it. Here is one that's growing in the gardens right now. This is incense that is really popular out there in cultivation. Very fragrant. So if you want to easy passion flowers, just yank a couple from the garden, you have them. Lady Margaret right here, that is also often available in the nurseries. Betty Jones Betty Miles Jones right here. And Victoria Pink right there. And here's Pura Vida. And there's gonna be different kinds of that one. And there's a close-up of Janet. And when you are developing the hybrid, if you are the creator, you get to name it after whomever you want or whatever you want. So there's a few rules, but that's why you have names of people. This is Oaklandia. It's growing in the back of the shade house. It's flowering right now. So next time you're in the garden, go look at it. It's gigantic. It was developed in Oakland, California, and that's why it has a name, Oaklandia. And then Precioso, that was developed in the Netherlands, that I grew as well. And then the Caisniana, Monica, Purple Haze, Valesi, White Wedding, Manta, and another hybrid that I developed, but I never bother in naming it because that's not my interest. So from hybrids, two more chapters. Let's talk about the fruit, passion fruit. So if pollination was successful, no matter how it came about, either human, animal, hybridizing, then you get what is known as a passion fruit. And here's an assortment of the different fruits that I come across. So you've seen this photograph before of the flower. Now, if we fast forward time, this is what you're gonna get. You have the ovary right in the center that will swell, becoming the fruit. The remnants of the flowers are gonna be on top, and even the stigma is gonna be at the bottom. So the important thing is now the fruit. When we look at some of the nurseries, this is how they are grown in containers here in a nursery in Compton. So they are very popular. This is how they are grown throughout the city of Long Beach, and they don't need any special structure. Any kind of building will do, fence, even a palm with a couple of wires would be very good for passion fruit. Even a trash bin is good for passion fruit. So we have the fruit. It will often change color when it ripens. And when you cut it in half, this is what's gonna be, how it's gonna look. So you have the rind that is usually not edible, and then you have the pulp that may be sweet, and then you have the seeds. Now, there are many ways that you can eat the fruit. If it's sweet, then you can just take a spoon and eat it off of the fruit itself. The rind gets thrown away. The seeds is you have options. You can chew them, you can spit them, you can swallow them. There's non-toxic, so it is your choice. Some of them may be hard, some of them may be soft, so you can experiment with eating different fruits. And so here's somebody eating passion fruit. A lot of people will strain the pulp to bring what is known as a concentrate that they would later on use it to make a drink or something else. Here is a wild form of the edible purple passion fruit that we found in Brazil. I'm saying wild because it is not as elaborate. So we have the corona filament that is kind of drab and not really attractive. And here is the fruit. The fruit for passion fruit. It is unfortunate that they are sold for about $3.50 plus a piece, when a single plant can give you over 200 fruits in a single season. But in most places, most stores, they are going to be quite expensive. So you take the fruit and you cut it in half. In this case, the purple would be one of the best and sweetest, and one of the better to eat right off of the fruit. This is how you serve them in your next party. And then there's also the golden form, the golden variety. The golden variety is going to be bigger. It's going to be juicier, so it's going to have more pulp, but it's going to be more sour. So the golden variety is the one that's preferred for desserts or for prepping, for yogurt. Anything that you buy or find in the store that has passion fruit has the pulp from the yellow variety that you see right here, the inside. Here's just a couple of different species of passion fruit that I grown here in the garden for scale. And I always recommend eat more passion fruit because it is very, very good for you. And so the last chapter is going to be the passion vine or passion flower butterfly. Be aware that this is going to sound like a soap opera. So we have an intricate association between the plant and the butterfly. I'm saying intricate because they depend on each other and they kind of help each other as well as hurt each other. So it's going to be a tragic story because we can begin with the butterfly. They are known as heliconius, or a common name would be long wing. And they are also going to be quite unique among the butterflies of the world. Number one, when you see them going to different flowers, they are going to extract the pollen from the flowers. So they're going to visit specific flowers, extract the pollen. They are then going to create a pollen ball that you see right here. So the pollen ball is going to be held and they're going to mix it with saliva and nectar. And by doing so, they are going to ingest a diet that is going to be much, much, much more nutritious and a lot more amino acids. Because of that, the butterflies have a longer lifespan. So they are going to live as an adult for an average of 4 to 6 months. So that would be a lot longer than a week for most of your other butterflies. They're also going to have a relatively larger head, which means they're going to be a lot smarter than your average butterfly. So because they have the ability to sustain a larger brain. The butterflies are known to congregate during the night. So every single night, they have to remember where home is. They will fly back and they will sleep in numbers, and that way they'll have extra protection. This group of butterflies are also known because if a male butterfly happens to find the female when they're in the chrysalis, they will mate. And as soon as the female emerges as an adult, All they need to do is find pollen nectar and begin to lay some of those eggs. And so if we take the life cycle of the butterfly, and we can see how the plant and the butterflies have changed each other. So we can begin with an adult butterfly that is going to be looking for a passion flower to lay the eggs. They can only lay them on passion vines, passion flowers, because that is the only plant that the caterpillars can digest. So the butterfly is going to is going to use her eyes or the eyes, and they're going to look for leaves that may resemble passion vines. So they're going to fly and look to and scan the forest. So knowing that the butterflies are looking for the plant had to evolve something to defend itself. And that is by changing the leaves. So passion flowers, passion vines have one of the biggest diversity in leaves, and that is because they have to keep hiding from the butterflies. And so here is an assortment of different leaves from different passion vines that I've grown. If those are not enough, here's a bunch more. So all so that they can hide. Now, if the butterfly happens to find the plant, there's going to be certain things that need to occur. So the butterfly is going to land on the plant, and then chemical signals received through its leg is going to verify that it is in fact a passion vine. The next thing that the butterfly is going to do is inspect the plant. It's going to inspect it for health. An unhealthy plant is not going to have enough energy for sustaining the caterpillars and getting them to adulthood. It's going to look for other eggs, which means that there's going to be more competition for the caterpillars of this butterfly. So, and it's also going to look for other caterpillars, because this group of caterpillars are known to be carnivorous, or they will eat other caterpillars if they happen to catch them. So knowing this, the plant had to use it to its advantage. So many passion vines are going to have the tip of the vine kind of drooping or arching, giving them a stress or a water stress appearance. And so that's going to make them look kind of sickly. Hopefully that will fool the butterfly. Also, the nectar glands that I mentioned before that are dot and or circular and golden in color are going to now become egg mimics. So when we look at this photograph, we have an egg and then an egg right here, and then we have the glands. So when the butterfly sees the glands, they're going to confuse them with eggs. They're going to think that there's already too many eggs present, and hopefully they're going to go out there and find another plant. The egg mimics can be found on many areas. So here we have the mimics at the tip of the leaf. Here we have the mimics as dummy eggs or dummy flower buds on the tendrils, and the same thing here. Here we have a dummy flower that is going to be yellow. That's never going to open to a flower, but looks like an egg. And here we have on the right side the growing tip. And notice the tips of the stipules have the golden glands. And then the tips of this vine here has eggs laid all over. So it's trying to prevent that from happening, and it's kind of gives it the same appearance. The stipules and a couple of other passion vines are going to have some kind of color and arch. They're going to or may look like caterpillars to a butterfly. And so with all of this, the butterfly can simply flutter somewhere else and go find a different vine, or it may just decide to lay its eggs and give their child this opportunity. So when the eggs are laid, they're going to take time to mature. Then we're going to have the caterpillar. The caterpillars are going to devour the leaves. And so the way the caterpillars are going to affect the plant If they devour the leaves, then that is going to prevent the plant from carrying out photosynthesis and gathering resources for producing flowers, thus not being able to produce seeds and not being able to produce the next generation. So the caterpillars are going to start as a egg, and then the young one is going to hatch. You can see it right here. The first thing that they're going to eat is going to be the eggshell. The eggshell has a lot of vitamins and minerals, and that's going to allow them to get a little bit bigger and start to develop stronger jaws. And in the beginning, you're going to see just tiny holes. They may not even touch the veins because those are too tough. So tiny holes, and as they get more vitamins and minerals, they'll keep on growing. So here's just the tiny holes until eventually they're going to devour the entire plant, every single leaf and everything else as they get older. So eating the leaves is not good for the plant, or if they happen to walk onto the flower, they can also devour the flower or damage the important components for developing fruits and seeds. And here's a flower that has been completely devoured or almost devoured, so no longer functional. So that's how the flower caterpillar is going to affect the plant. So knowing that, the plant had to find a way to fight the caterpillars. Passion flowers, passion vines are known to be poisonous. So they develop over time some kind of toxin that is going to fend off the attack. So over time, the caterpillars learned to take those toxins and incorporate them into their own body. So the reason why there's this beautiful color patterns on the butterflies is because now the butterflies incorporate the toxin into their own body, making them toxic for birds or their own predators. So that is a signal war, signaling birds and other animals that they should not be eating them. The hairs on some passion vines are going to be almost like hooks. If you get them to your clothing, they're gonna stick like Velcro. So when the caterpillar happens to be walking on the leaf, the hooks are going to tear the exoskeleton, and they're going to kill the caterpillar by injuring it and desiccating it. So that's going to happen with certain passion vine. And also the nectar glands that I talked about before are going to secrete nectar, and the nectar is going to be the favorite food for ants. It is not uncommon to find passion vines that are going to have ants running all over them. So in the process of protecting the valuable food, the ants will fight off anybody. So here's the ant taking the nectar from the nectar glands there. And here's an ant. And if you look at those jaws, when I see that in the wild, like, that's your plant, ant. I'm not going to touch you. I'm not going to fight you, because they can bite and they can definitely be painful. So hiring ants as protectors, bodyguards, is going to be done by the plants through the nectary glands. And so if it managed to survive, the butterfly, the caterpillar will then pupate, and kind of hopefully nothing happens to it. And in a couple of weeks, it's going to emerge as the adult butterfly, and it's going to go and find some pollen nectar and begin to lay all of the her eggs. And so as we look at the different butterflies that we have here, in California, we have the Gulf frilly. This, you can see it flying in the garden because we have lots of passion vine, very common. Not native to California, but introduced later on with passion vines. It is native to eastern US, and I think all the way to Texas. There's a side view. Also in Florida, in South US, we have the zebra or zebra longwing that also feeds on passion vine, and there's the side view for this. And as you start venturing into South America, we have the tiger longwing, and there's a side view, or the common postman with its side view. and the blue and white longwing with its side view, and the blue heliconid, and we have a lot of passion flowers. So with this, I will end this presentation, and I will take any questions that you might have. If somebody has a question.
I didn't see that that one you had at school with had those orange butterflies on it, and it had kind of that fern type structure around it. You were saying?
The fern like bracts.
Yeah, it's like a white creamy substance on the inside. The seeds are, I think it's white. I forget.
The one that which one?
I think you just you discovered it, or you found it. I
Well,
forgot.
I found the ball.
Yeah. But I forget which one it was. But I took some from school.
Was it from the shed?
It was in front, next to that fig tree. Yeah, in front of the tool shed.
Oh no, that's a hybrid.
Oh, okay.
That's a Yara. It's flowering right now with red flowers.
Yeah, I think maybe.
Yeah, that's a Yara. So that's a hybrid that was given to me.
Okay.
YARA.
Thank you.
Any other questions? All right, well, thank you for joining me. So I'll stop the recording so that I won't make it too long for the other students. All right, have a great weekend. If I don't see you again for another class, for tomorrow's class, and I'll see you on Tuesday, right? Yes, Tuesday. Take care.
Thank you.